This is a demonstration of the local storage component of HTML5. As you will see here, I have two documents opened up in Visual Studio Code. I have a form that's working right here. It's really not a form, it's a bunch of input type elements. You'll notice that I have a style sheet right here that I've linked to, CSS style.css, which is opened up in another tab over here. I'll show you what that looks like. I have a bunch of spans to hold some text. The name of these spans is the ID of these spans is field. Again, I'm taking some input about first name. I think this should be last name, first name, last name. This should be email, and this last one should be address. I also have two button type inputs over here, one's for submitting the form and one's for clearing the form. Now the purpose of this form is to take data in. Once I click on submit, the submit function runs, and when I submit the form, the data that is present in those input fields is stored in local storage. When the form is then reloaded, data is read from local storage and is used to populate those input fields. When I hit the clear button, I clear the form and I also clear the local storage. So really that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys with the local storage component. Also, I have a style.css over here. I have a couple of divs, personal data and message. Personal data is where the form is, this one right here, that's highlighted. Message is the div right here, that's highlighted, and so it has some coloring around it. I've just set a certain size for the input form elements or the input fields. Also something for the spans. So if I preview this in the browser, this is kind of what the form looks like, right? So relatively straightforward. Okay, so getting back to now writing the JavaScript and what I actually wanted to do, which is that on submission I would read the input fields and I would take those input fields and store them in local storage. Now to accomplish that, I would obviously need to have some JavaScript. So I would have my script tags. Right? Now within these scripts I'm going to declare a function. Now you notice in this case I have a function on click that's run that's called submit. So I'll declare a function submit. Now this function is going to do a couple of different things. First of all, it's got to take all the inputs. It's got to take all the inputs from, or it's got to take all data from the input fields. And so I can use another function. Instead of using getElementById, I can use the getElementsByTag name function, and I can give it the input input tag as an input. So I'm going to declare a variable called inputs that receive all, which would really be a collection of nodes, and the nodes that I'm interested in are the input elements. Now, so that'd be document dot get elements by tag name. In this case, the tag that I'm interested in is the input tag that is used. So now one thing you'll have to realize is that I have a variety of different types of input tags, right? And so what I want to do is I want to get kind of the values for all those input tags, but there are some input tags that don't actually want the values for, right? I have, if you take a look at this, I have two inputs that one of which is both of these are buttons, so I don't want the values for these button tags. For every other input I want the values for. And so one way I can process all the different inputs that I have is I could write a loop, right? I could write a loop, I could write a for loop for I equal to 0, and so this is just a regular for loop that you're familiar with, I less than. Now I can use the length property of inputs to loop through all the input elements in inputs, right? So for the length of inputs, right? Now, one of the initial things I'm going to do is, if I wanted to, I could just console log this. I can see if my if this code is actually working. I can console log this out, and what I want is the value of the 0th element and the first element and the second element to just really see what their values are. So I could do inputs dot, or see the ith element of inputs and its in fact value. So if I do this, all I would see when I hit submit would be to see something in the console to show me all the different inputs that I have. So just reloading the page, and I'm just gonna, whoops. There we go. I now see the console, and so I'm just gonna I want to submit this, and let's see if stuff shows up in the console. So if I hit submit, there we go. So I see Nikhil Srinivasan entering at uga.edu 215JDR, and I also see submit form and clear form. So what I don't want is the values of submit form and clear form, right? This is what I was talking to you guys about earlier, which is that I don't actually want to see the values for these button type inputs. So one thing I could do is, before I write to local storage, before I use the set item function of the local storage object, one thing I could do is I could say if the input element, if the ith element and its type is not equal to button, only if it's not, if the type of the input is not button, do I actually want to write the value of that input element to the local storage, right? So I have an if statement within my loop, and I'm going to say, okay, now if I want to, so now I'm going to have only those components that are not of type button, right? And now what I can do is I can use the set item method of the local storage object. So I can say local storage, and I can use the set item method. And what I want to do is I've got to specify a key and a value. Now you could think, okay, what could I specify as a key? Now this is where it starts. I mean, you can think, okay, what would be an appropriate key? And so let's take a look at the form, right? You will notice that I have IDs of fname, lname, email, and address over here. An ID might actually be a good key. And corresponding to that ID, you'd have the value of the key, and you can then use the keys when you actually want to repopulate this form when you're getting data actually from the local storage element, right? And so we can use the set item method, and one of the things that we want to do is we want to get from the collection, we want to get the ith element, and we want to get its ID. So that would be the key, and the value would be the ith element's value, right? And this way you can actually set use a set item method in local storage, right? Now, how do we know whether this works, right? How do we know whether this works? So let's reload this. And let's take a look at this. Nikhil Srinivasan, email, it's entering at uga.edu, info1 C416, Benson Hall. Right? And I want to submit the form. Whoops. So I have an error over here. Button is not defined. Oh, see, this button needs to be within quotes right there. Okay. So let's reload this. Let's do this once again. If I submit the form, now obviously I'm seeing this on the console, but I'm hoping that there is some data in local storage. So how do I go about checking that out? Click on memory right here. Whoops. It's actually not memory then. Aha, right there. Application. Now you will see under application we have storage, local storage, and now under local storage you'll see keys and values, and we have a key address C416 Benson Hall, email entering at UGA, F name Nikhil, L name Srinivasan. So we can now see that there is in fact data in local storage, right? Great. And so this is how you use the set item method to actually put data into the local storage object of HTML5 that's present in the browser. Now if you wanted to check if this is going to persist, I'm going to quit the browser, and then I can reopen the browser. So the browser session was gone, the browser session was closed. Now I've reloaded the browser. Oh, there it is. I just had to open up the file. My mistake. And so the local storage has these pieces of information that we in fact wanted, right?